Today's session is about how theatres work with their community. The closure of theatres and the tentative steps to reopening have forced theatres to think about acting differently. In our last seminar, we discussed new approaches to performance and how to maintain a relationship with your audience. This week, we're considering more the civic role of theatres and their place as collaborators and co-creators with the people in their local area. Theatres Trust will often speak about how theatres serve communities, but there's often a perception that the practice of community activity has had a paternalistic approach in the past, but we've seen an emerging movement of true cross-fertilisation of ideas between artists and communities, and with communities as the artists. Whether looking to respond to the current emergency or building a whole new model of working around community work, some of our speakers today offer a really fresh insight into how theatres can work effectively with the people who surround them. There's no one best route for any theatre, but I hope the variety of approaches that the range of speakers have taken, who we'll hear about today, and the learning they can share will help theatres to consider their positioning and how to make sure they're part of the cultural life of their place in the broadest possible of senses. So first off, we're going to hear from Sarah Brigham at Derby Theatre, and I think she's joined with Emma White and Heather Slominski, two community co-presenters today. They've been working on a few really interesting projects during the pandemic, continuing to provide opportunities for performance and creation. I think I'll hand over to Sarah now to give a bit of an introduction, and then she'll have a chat with Emma and Heather about their experiences of the project.
Thanks, Tom. Hello, everyone. We'll just start by introducing ourselves. So my name's Sarah Brigham, as Tom said. I'm the Chief Exec and Artistic Director of Derby Theatre. I use pronouns she, her, and I'm a middle-aged woman, white woman with mid-length brown hair. Emma, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Emma, I'm 23, part of +1. I'm a white woman with brown hair and my pronoun is she, her.
Thanks, Emma. Heather, are you online? Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am. My name is Heather Slominski and I'm part of the Derby community. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a white woman, 35, brown hair and wears glasses.
And Heather's just come off a night shift, so thank you, Heather, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Awake.
So we've only got 8 minutes to talk. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you an overview of a couple of projects that we've run during the pandemic, and then I'm going to invite Emma and Heather to speak a bit. Just before this, I thought, oh, you probably don't just want to look at my face, so I threw some pictures into a PowerPoint. But I'm the most untechnical person ever, so I might get this wrong, and it might all be terrible, but we'll give it a go. Play from start. Can you see that? Yeah, brilliant, great. Okay, so here's a slide with a nice quote from The Guardian, which you'll see in pretty much every single piece of publicity we ever produce ever, because we don't get that many pieces in The Guardian. And I guess I'd just like to start by saying that we're really delighted to be here, but we also recognise that we've got loads to learn, not just from the other panellists today, who are really exciting, but also from all of you in the room. Looking at the delegate list, I felt quite intimidated. I appreciate that there's lots of brilliant practice going on, and this is just a tiny snapshot into ours. So Derby Theatre, to give you some context, used to be called Derby Playhouse, and we welcome about 120,000 people through our doors each year. That's 100,000 people as audiences and 20,000 participants. We produce our own work, we have touring work on our stages, and we have a huge participation programme working in schools, community centres, PRUs, residential homes and the outdoors. And I've seen on the call that Cheryl, Caroline and Lauren have come to see this thing as well, which I didn't even know they were coming, so that's great to have them here. I could spend hours talking to you about how we engage with the community. It's genuinely the most important thing that we do, and it's also been the career path that I've progressed through personally, so I'm very passionate about it. If there's time, I can talk about later in questions about how our business model allows us to put it at the centre of what we do, as that might be of interest. But for today, given that we do have such a short time, we're just going to talk you through two projects that we ran through the pandemic. So I'll start with +1. So +1 is a year-round programme working with young people in care and care leavers. We run regular sessions, residentials and projects, and during the pandemic, that developed into a variety of things. From delivering activity packs to our younger members to delivering food parcels to those who were older and living independently of the care system for the first time. And we also, alongside that, offered Zoom cooking lessons. And the aforementioned Caroline does a brilliant bolognese if you want the video of that. But the project that we want to talk to you about tonight today was our book club. The group of young people in care and care leavers met weekly to read the novel Home Girl by Alex Wheatle. And you might have seen his personal story recently on the Small Axe series. If you haven't, look it up because it's really brilliant. They read the book weekly and they explored the themes, and Alex himself joined the group each week to read with them and chat. This was the best book club ever, where the author himself was part of the group. Now that group of young people are working with us as co-commissioners for a stage adaptation of the novel on the main house next year. They've selected the professional writers, Nathan Powell and Sarah Rain, and we've also got a young person working alongside those two writers. And they're working with them as the expert consultants, given that they have the lived experience of the main character who lives in the care system. Emma's been part of this group and she'll talk about it in a bit. As I said, we've also appointed a young writer to work with the writing team directly. And the final show will have a group of professionals and non-professionals working side by side in all the backstage roles and on stage. And I'll direct the show as the building's artistic director. The second project I want to talk about is Derby Rises. So Derby Rises was a project aimed at working with some groups we already had a connection with pre-pandemic. Some we knew better than others. So the refugee community, who we regularly invite into what we call our Meet Your Neighbour parties. The LGBTQT community, who we've worked with through various commissions, and a group of, want for a better word, people local to Derby, or perhaps, to use a funding term, those who identify as working class. But it was also open to people who had no contact previously, but might have identified with these groups. So we brought these groups together. Some of it happened online and some of it happened socially distanced, because we recognise that these groups, who are often excluded every day by the mainstream, were being even more isolated by the pandemic. We wanted to give them a place to heal, we wanted to give them a place to connect, and we wanted to give them a place to reflect on lockdown and on their hopes and dreams for post-COVID. So we worked with artist Leo Kay, an unfinished business, and we spent the day baking bread, which is what you can see there. You can see them, these are the ones that we were able to meet in person. So as the bread rested, which apparently it does, I've never made bread before, we held a safe space to talk and to listen. In those sessions, whilst we were talking and listening and making bread, we also invited some artists who were drawn from the same communities, and they developed artistic responses to what they had heard that day. Then in those heady days of August, when we thought it was all going to be over, we opened up our theatre for one night only and had a socially distanced audiences of the community participants. And we gave the stage over to the artists to perform, and the communities from the workshops came to watch. This is Simone, who some of you might know, doing hairpiece in relation to the LGBTQT sessions. We served a huge pan of curry, and socially distanced, we laughed and enjoyed the artists' responses to our thoughts. We had a rap, we had a piece of performance poetry, we had a stand-up lecture, we had a jazz band, and we had a hula hooping act on skates. And Heather was part of that bread making group, although she didn't make the show because she had a night shift that night too. So thinking about these two projects, and like I say, we could have picked loads more. What are the things that connect them? Guess that we started from what the group wanted to do rather than from a fixed idea of what we thought they wanted. So we do sometimes put plays on with our groups, and both Emma and Heather have been in some of those. But if there's another cultural activity that we feel will connect at that moment and with that group, like bread making or book reading, then we're open to that. And we try to put the community in the driving seat alongside the artist. In +1, those young people are now the commissioners of the project and are co-designing it. And in Derby Rises, they were the inspiration for the artists. And the next step was to then commission the groups to make their own work, but the pandemic has put a pause on that. So that's kind of a real quick run through two projects. And then we just wanted to give Emma and Heather some chance to talk to you. And we thought that we'd do that through some questions that we've prepared. So Emma, do you want to start? Do you want to start telling us about yourself and what brought you into contact with Derby Theatre?
Yep. Okay, so I'm 23 years old and I'm part of the +1 team. Have been since about 17. I'm probably one of the longest members. I took part in different projects. I've been a self-drive piece with the +1 team and Jungle Book and like different areas like care upon care. And yeah, just stuff like that really. I came to +1 through college and adult learning centre. And yeah.
Great, thanks Emma. And Heather, what to tell us about yourself and what brought you into contact with Derby Theatre?
So I'm a paediatric nurse. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Yep. I'm currently been quite creative. I'm making some hammer bead cards. I have my own page of handmade by HRS if anyone's interested in buying one of my cards. I've always acted since I went to secondary school, and as for as long as I've been qualified, which is 11 years, I have done pantomime, my local amateur group, which I really enjoy every year. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I enjoy baking, as you know, with baking bread, but my aversion to flour is not great. And I love to read. What connected me to Derby Theatre was actually Derby Playhouse through Pete Meakin many years ago, through George Orwell's Animal Farm. And from that point of contact, I therefore went on to do other community shows and youth theatres through Derby Theatre.
Thanks, Heather. So Emma and Heather have kind of very different connections to us, I guess. Like Heather's come through a kind of more traditional youth theatre and then developed on through that, and Emma came through us through the +1 project. Can you tell us, Heather, about how the connection to Derby Theatre impacts your daily life? So
at the moment, it keeps me very positive, and knowing that there's a very small glimmer of light after a long tunnel of COVID at the moment keeps me very positive for the future, really.
Thanks, Heather. What about you, Emma?
Well, it gives me the option to be more confident and sociable with people. And it's given me the idea and the ability to be able to come forward and do some like work experience with the team at Derby Theatre.
Thanks, Emma. And then we just thought we'd ask you what else you hope to do with Derby Theatre in the future. This is just R&D for me, really, so I know what else we need to do. Heather, do you want to go first?
Just to be on stage and to be part of a community again that's not just work, to have that opportunity to be with other people that you don't normally see in every walk of life, really.
Yeah, and you, Heather, you were involved, well, you were as well, actually. I mean, you've been involved in some of our BSL integrated shows, so got to know the deaf community, and I think you said to me that they're not the deaf community isn't necessarily a community that you might have known otherwise had it not have been for the involvement in that show. Is that right?
That's absolutely true, yeah, correct.
Right. And Emma, what are you hoping to do with us in the future?
Continue doing work experience at the theatre and carry on with the +1 team and just doing the projects that come along.
Yeah, we're keen to kind of help you develop your career pathways, really, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And you said that you wanted to do the job that Caroline does, who's on the call. So I'm just giving her a heads up. Okay, great. Thanks very much, both of you. So that's kind of the end. It's like we had 8 minutes to talk, so hopefully you've had a bit of a snapshot into what we're doing, but we're really open to any questions or anything else. Thanks, Tom.
That's great, Sarah. Thank you. I think it's not the last we're going to hear of food as a route to community throughout the theatres, and I think the entrepreneurialism that has emerged out of lockdown and the many an Etsy store that we've seen open up, and how these creative businesses kind of have flourished throughout the lockdown, have been in a really interesting turn that kind of we might not have foreseen. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I feel like some might pop up later, so I might just put you on hold, put you on standby for now, and come back to you as people reflect on what the questions are. Oh, Lee Johnson saying they have a question. Do you want to just jump on with your microphone, Lee?
Sure. Just about the bread, I really liked that concept. I think it sounded great. Did you bake it in the venue, or did people take it home and bake, or just what was the logistics around that as such?
Yeah, it was a massive, it was like a military operation. So we hired 2 ovens because we went to 4 different community sites in the end, and we took 2 portable ovens. They're about £100 each to hire, just so you know, and we took them into the venue. So the venues had to have access to running water, because originally we were going to do it outdoors, but we ended up because of social distancing, whatever, we were able to do it indoors. So yeah, we just needed access to water, and then we've now got a massive bread making kind of pack of like bowls and things like that. So yeah, but that was with the artist Leo K, an unfinished business. So, and we're developing that project further, and I know he's really keen to work with other community groups, so do get in touch with us after this and I can hook you up.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll move on now to Slough. So we're joined by Saadadine Said and Christina Brooks Abraham, and they're going to talk about some of the kind of the new work that's emerged during the pandemic for them in Slough. Over to you, Saad.
Oh, hi, Tom, and hi, everyone. First, just a big thank you for having us today. It was such a good exercise to reflect about last year and remember the journey that took us where we are today. And a huge thank you to many of your guests and many in the audience today that just kept us going through the last 9 months, through all challenges. So my name is Saad. I'm the director of Home Slough. I'm a male. My pronouns are he and him. I'm 1.80 meter tall and a little bit skinny and brown and bearded. And I just pass it quickly to Tina to present herself.
Hi, I'm Christina Brooks Abraham, and I just guess I'm black and 5'6", and yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Great.
She and her, I guess, yeah.
Great. So just for a bit of background, Home Slough is a CPP, is a Creative People and Places project supported by Art Council that came as a response to places around the UK that has low engagement in the arts. So that's our main mission. This is why we were created. We're a very tiny team. For last year was just me and my operational manager going through the pandemic, but we do have a big ambition to do everything we do with our people instead of for them. Our main mission and the way we do work is we're really not focusing in helping our community through struggle, but instead we like to share that struggle with them and try and figure out the solutions out of this. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we had to close our venue at the center of the high street, a venue that hasn't opened since. And since then, we've been just doing work remotely. We did feel very early in March that this is going to have a long-term impact. We felt it will be overwhelming for many of the artists and communities we work with. And we needed to find a way to speak about the pandemic in a positive way. And one of the values we did find in the pandemic, which was a response to many conversations we had with our community, is time that they never had before, time to reflect and time to develop new ideas. So with artists and members of our community, we started to reflect, and that reflection came as a reflection on our society, one where it is easier to speak ideas instead of acting ideas, one where we often hear about change instead of experiencing change, and one where most solutions are on TED Talks, but we are still experiencing a world that is kind of broken. And this is the first reflection that came from all of these conversations. And it's from that conversation that we decided that we would invest in training and professional coaching to arm our creative community with the tools and the language to action their ideas around change and start implementing those within the communities that matter the most for them. So during the first 2 months, between April and May, we worked with around 25 people from all over Slough, all backgrounds, all genders, all ages, and we embarked on individual journeys with most of them through the year, so that we can use art and conversations and the power of collectives to really implement and make change and support communities to grow through this new platform. It was definitely not an easy journey to take. It came with a lot of arguments, disagreements. We laughed, we cried, and we went through many emotions, but it was always built around the same passion and the same values, and the same vision. Using all platforms and connecting with refugees, care homes, young people, children, and elderly from all of our communities, this really vision-based journey has actually had a tremendous impact on Slough as a business. We have been able to increase our audiences by 10 times through the year compared to 2019, which is incredible when most of our work was meant to happen from a venue. So here I will just leave the space to Christina, who's been part of this journey from its conception from very early in March until today. What I find really interesting through the conversations that I had with Christina leading to this is that we have actually met face to face just for maybe 5 minutes before the lockdown. So it's incredible that as much as we're far from each other, the connections that this COVID has brought are incredibly amazing. So the floor is yours, Tina.
Thank you. So I was lucky enough that when they offered the courses, I applied for 2 and I actually got accepted for 2. And that was a producer's course, which was allowing me to work with a group of other community creatives and look at how we produce. Now, I had a fixed way of being that I've been doing this kind of work for 30 years, so there's nothing that they could possibly teach me. Well, how wrong was I? And it was just great to interact with other people and actually get some more ideas. So that changed my perspective of how I looked at things. And it also helped me to, you know, do more work and reach out to a larger scale. Those group of people became people that I could interact with. And on the mentoring course, which was a one-to-one, it was mentoring and coaching. It came at the time where COVID had just set in. I was self-employed project managing and I was unemployed now. So my self-esteem was going downhill and I had a community of people that was experiencing the same thing. So I think that this helped me to get that one-to-one and to help me to reinvent myself, help me to, what can I do? You know, if I had to start again, how can I use this as an opportunity as opposed to, you know, going downhill? And then it was strengthening me as a community activist, as a leader, to actually bring other people on board this same thing. So I weren't just talking about it, I was walking it and I was taking them with me. So we were able to help to lift each other up and that sort of thing. So I found that amazing. So we went on to speak to Slough about our Windrush community. So it had a lot of our seniors that were down, you know, and they don't use technology. So how could we get their stories? So we came up with a really creative idea. And, you know, as Saad said, the conversations were, you don't understand our community, you know, we had to really have hardcore communities, conversations. And at the same time, we were dealing with the murder in America, the George Floyd, so very, you know, serious views that people had. And how do we change those opinions? And a lot of this had to be done through really straight conversations, really airing different opinions and views and learning from each other. So we kind of went through that as well. And then we came up with food, because food is a universal language that nobody argues about, like the other lady said, and our love for food. So some of our communities were already doing that. And, you know, we spoke about how could we do a joint project. So 3 of us, 3 groups got together, Slough and 2 other groups, and we created Global Cooking Theatre. And it was bringing people from all walks of life, all different, it was representing their country and also them, their memories, why they love this dish, and they would put on costumes and dress up, and you know, we'd have about 25 or 30 people online, so we didn't get the ovens, we actually were at our own homes, and you know, just brought us together, and then we'd sit down and eat together and have a story and a conversation about, you know, where this dish came from, what was the culture, what was the background. Fantastic project. And it just, I now feel through that I have friends, and we're about to go into season 3, so that's really exciting, and it had a very long-term thing to it. The Windrush project, it was fantastic as well. So we got the seniors on board, and I think they fell in love with technology after that. They found something really new, so that kind of changed their view and their perspective. And then we went into Black History Month in October, and we done something that was never done in the history of Slough. We put these fantastic murals, which were stories about local people and their history, And on my Facebook page, I'd done my first Facebook Live, and I said to people, please come and visit this. And I got over 3,000 views on my Facebook post for that. And people were contacting me and saying, this is amazing, it's never been done. And a lot of those people were saying, I'm not Black, and I love this, Christina, and I'm so proud that I've grown up in Slough and I get to see this. People were contacting me from Australia saying, I used to live in Slough and this is a fantastic opportunity for Slough. So that was really great, like collecting these live hero stories and giving them that, you know, that opportunity to be, it was massive. The whole window of Home Slough, it had 4 heroes. And I went for Black men as well, because there's such a negative stereotype of them. So that was one of the things that was kind of, when we done the research, that was one of the things that people said would be good. So that has been my experience with Home Slough. I'm really speaking about it fast. The people that came on board for Global Cooking, they said that they wanted to gain confidence. Some of them were housewives that had never done this, and they are really confident now. I think they're ready to go to Broadway or wherever this show takes them. They're just ready for the road. So I think that's about it, Saad. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Christina. There's a question that's come up in the chat from Sarah asking, what sort of project management were you doing before? Were you working in the arts before? And what was it that attracted you to the producing course?
Yeah, so my community group is Vision, Impression, Black Expression. So it was a performing arts community group. My project managing has been like managing family events. Our funerals are normally like 500 people. So you can imagine with COVID, we've had to kind of go from 500 to 20, really emotional impact and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was project managing, performing arts based. But yeah, I do everything now to events in the House of Lords and everything. So yeah. Thanks.
Great. And I think what you were saying about the barriers people felt about engaging with these arts projects initially is really interesting, and how kind of by using food you managed to convince them to engage in something that they might have rejected before as an arts or theatre project, but food is the thing.
I can see a question there that says, how did we get them to?
Yeah.
So Home Slough has a newsletter that goes out, and we took that to all of our networks. The actual people that first got on board, I've over the years, 30 years of experience, I've got people in all walks of life, all different nationalities, and it was just getting each of them to come on board and agree to do this, and then it just opened the doors for so many others. So it started very simple, but now it is actually growing, representing lots of different countries and lots of different foods.
That's great, excellent. There's a question for you, Saad, about, I mean, the extraordinary fact that you dropped in that your audiences have managed to increase during coronavirus, which I think many a theatre would be jealous of. Do you think that do you think that the fact that you were not non-building based gave you that flexibility? Is the real focus of that question?
Yeah, I would say yes during COVID, but it's an equation of things. We're a very tiny team. Venues can be super helpful to have, and sometimes can be a challenge. I don't think there is a straightforward answer. For us, it definitely did help to not have the venue, but I know that for other organizations that work with different models, losing the venue would just be a catastrophe. And for our communities, it's definitely important to have venues that survive and strive through these times.
That's great. No, thank you. And one final question for this session, because I am pressed for time to fit everybody in, is for Christina again, talking about how did you reach those people who weren't online with your work, and yeah, how did you manage to reach out to them?
So Rochdale Alexis, who was the other person involved in our partnership with Global Cooking, she runs Slough Dominica Association, and she wanted to be a radio host. So what we've done is we decided to record it on Zoom, as simple as that, and then we made it into podcast and put them on YouTube, and most of the seniors was able to access them that way. So it was a really fantastic idea that we co-created. We had lots of conversations, and those seniors really embraced that. And some of them built up their confidence to actually get on Zoom in the end. And, you know, so there was lots of different ways of how can we roll this out, from email to text message. We were just putting that YouTube link on their phones. So it got to thousands of people in the end.
Great, thank you very much. So now I'm going to move over to Leeds and specifically to Slung Low and the Holbeck. I think it's fair to say the onset of the pandemic has radically transformed what Slung Low do for now, in the short term at least, and the experience of everyone involved up there have been a window for me into different people's perspectives on the pandemic as I watched through Twitter everything that Slung Low's been up to. I'm interested to hear from Alan Lane, the Artistic Director, and Graziella McIntyre from Slung Low's Community Advisory Board.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm a 42-year-old white man in a barber jacket and a really crinkled, tired face. That's me.
Hi, I am Graziella McIntyre. I'm a community member. I live in Holbeck. I'm Latin American. I'm 5'3" petite, wear glasses and have an accent.
All right, brilliant. So we were a large-scale outdoor theatre company, and we made big shows in city centres with headphones, and we used to say they're sometimes on water and always on fire, with hundreds of people in the cast, and they're normally about political things. They take up a lot of room, they make a lot of noise. And then you moved into the oldest working men's club in Britain called the Holbeck 2 years ago. Holbeck is a brilliant area of the city centre with lots of challenges. And we moved in and we run the working men's club for the members. They still own it. We guarantee them against loss. And from here,
you see what I mean? There's
okay.
Sorry, I've muted that interruption.
That's all right. And we run a cultural community college of adult education and performances of shows, and everything we do in this venue is pay what you decide. So after a year and a half here of doing all of that, it was good fun, COVID hit, and so we shut and we became the social care referral unit for the ward of Holbeck and Beeston, which is 7,500 households. What that really means is we became a non-means tested self-referral food bank. You can't run a pay what you decide theatre and decide your food bank requires you to be referred by organisations too tired to be able to process as many people who need food. So in very simple terms, if you ask for food well, we do Leeds now, so if you ask for food, we will deliver it. Today's food bank day, so we just cleared 227 deliveries. We'll probably do about another 30 before the end of the day. I've got a really short video. I think I can share it. I think
you should be able to, yeah.
Let's give this a go. Oh, I know. Oh, maybe this will be beyond us. Let's have a look.
Welcome to the Holbeck. Because of the virus, my dad has turned this building into a food bank. Every family gets one box filled with loads of yummy treats. Like bread, or things.
He doesn't know what they are, it's bleach.
Maybe things like that, or this, or probably this, or this, or maybe everything. And don't forget the toilet paper. Look how many eggs we have. It's someone's job to divide these eggs into different packages to go to different families. Where we get food from?
Okay.
We get it from shops that don't need it anymore, and all the food stored in this big cold van.
Right. So this big cold van.
From time by time.
There you go. So that's Leeds United and Clipper and the Real Junk Food Project, who are our everyday partners. And we had never, well, we'd heard of Leeds United before this this crisis, but we certainly didn't speak to them. And I didn't know what to do with a football club. And it turns out, if you're gonna, we did 8,188 food parcels last year. You need food and you need somewhere to store it. And the Real Junk Food Project are people who, again, we had no partnership with, who take food out of the food distribution model and are as close to Slung Low, whilst not being a theatre company, as an organisation I've ever come across, actually. And they save food and then they give it to us for free and we give it away. But we were struggling with the logistics of how to do that. And Clipper is Leeds United's primary sponsor and they are logistic experts. And so now we have a refrigerated container out. So all of this is brand new. All of this only existed 11 months. Those relationships, those partnerships, how we tell the story, you're going to hear from Graziella in a second, but We used to have people make really nice videos about us. Now my son does it, and more people have seen that video in the last 24 hours. That's raised hundreds of pounds for the food bank. It has completely transformed how we see ourselves, how we tell our stories, what we think we're for, what the point of our funding is for, and how we talk to our organisation. Before I hand over to Graciela, in Slung Low, 3 times a year, if you're a member of the team here, you have to hand deliver our college flyer to the doors of Holbeck. It was a test. I had to do it. Everyone has to do it, because then we could say to people with a straight face, like, we know our community. We literally hand deliver these flyers, and we did that for 10 years. And then we started a food bank, and within a week, and Holbeck's only 2,000 houses, so it's really small. It's a kind of square mile. We were getting referrals to streets I'd never heard of. It was like platform 9 3/4 in Harry Potter. I'm like, how are there like 4 streets called I've never heard of them. We delivered to these people. We did not. We were as close to our community as we thought we had to be, and this has made us realise that we were not. And now we are. And now I'm friends with a man who runs a football club. This is Graciela. We don't have a board. We're not a charity. We have we are renegades, but we do have a community advisory board that we take very seriously. We do everything they ask, and Graciela is on it. And Graciela is going to talk about her experience of us and us being here and stuff.
Right. I met Alan accidentally, big brackets, on our community meetings. Holbeck is an inner city with lots of needs. It's a very special place. Somebody up in government said that we had to have a neighborhood plan, whatever that means. It was very strange. We didn't know anything about it, and it had to be done by the community. Alan and his team were based in very close to the city center and the Sun Railway arches, and Alan came across and joined the Holbeck neighborhood plan, and then there was an explosion of knowledge as to what Slung Low was. I was really excited. I couldn't keep this quiet, so I told all my friends, I told all my neighbors, look, these guys are in Holbeck. Oh yeah, but they are in the prostitution area. Oh. Well, that raised quite a lot of questions, lots of problems, but Alan and his team and his spirit of commitment is unbelievable. He promises and he delivers. I just admire the commitment these people have. They say, we will do it, and he does it. He begs, pinches, knocks doors, puts people against the wall and says, please help us.
I don't actually pinch. I think that's it.
No.
What does us being here, what do you do that you wouldn't have done before?
I would not have access to incredible arts and incredible pieces of theatre. I won't have access to a class that teaches me how to make bread, how to swallow fire, how to manage a sword. Lots of stuff they brought into the community. They brought a community college. And those flyers he was talking about earlier was inviting people to join into the community college. And is pay as what you decide if you want to pay. And that has given lots of people the opportunity to have a go and to look at theatre and arts from a different angle. We have go in these massive houses. We go the opera house, we go the playhouse, we go other things. But I don't think our community, Holbeck residents, can access the same type of arts in that place as we can do here. And there are lots of groups that passes through here. You offer the place to lots of visitors, to also small groups that come through. Yeah. And that is just amazing. Probably if you want to ask me some questions, yeah.
Yeah, we're on time, so let's stop there. Brilliant. Wow, that was good. Tom, is that what you...
That's perfect. Thank you very much. I mean, so many things, and I think again we talk about making bread. Maybe that is the root of all of our theatre. The beginning of all of our theatre journeys from now on is making that bread, and also swallowing fire. Clearly, a very important skill to have on your books there. There's a question here for Alan about. How would you say the company mission has changed? So you've always said Slung Low is a theatre company, and at this moment in time you are a food bank, but you are a theatre company. How do you think this year has affected your mission?
I think we've recognised the kind of deep learning that we've been forced to do, but I think we're also arguing very passionately that our actual core mission hasn't changed. Our core mission has always been to provide the people of Holbeck with the best cultural life that we can. We spend £500 million a year nationally of public money on the arts, and we know that that is not reaching all of our communities, and our community is Holbeck, and it wasn't reaching it. So our job is to leverage that. In this moment, it would be an absolute act of horrendousness to put on theatre that people weren't able to come and see because, outside of lockdown, because they were too worried about where their next meal was going to go. So it is the same mission, it's just we've understood we have a greater responsibility. It's no point me putting on an amazing cabaret with Davina de Campo in the car park if people are too worried about where breakfast is coming to come and see it. And whilst we've removed barriers to the arts, there are other barriers, and it's still our job. There are kids in our community without crayons, and we have an opera company. And that drives me so mad, it makes me want to scream. And until everybody's got crayons, no one should have opera, and we're going to have to have that discussion kind of as a city, as a country, as a sector, and that's our mission. That's always been our mission. It's just become much kind of more finely defined.
That's great. And Graziella, it would be really interesting to hear about the neighbourhood plan and how you work with Slung Low on that. So what was the kind of outcome of that, the neighbourhood plan?
It's been like 10 years of work, and the neighbourhood plan now has been approved. It has been an exemplary piece of work for other communities around the country. And on this document, which is a legal document, now we have stated the vision for Holbeck and the vision for the residents to make it a better place to live, work, have better services. And the mission is there and the policies are there. And the intentions are there. Hopefully, with the help of the organizations around the country and the local government, we will be able to develop.
That's great.
Of the neighborhood.
That's excellent. Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of theatres could really kind of engage in an interesting way, is thinking about what is thinking about their place in that neighbourhood in a bigger way, and actually engaging to deliver these neighbourhood plans. And these are documents that exist nationwide. A lot of neighbourhoods don't even have them yet. So kind of Holbeck is leading the charge in the neighbourhood planning. So that's really great to see. There are more questions in the chat, but I'm really pressured by time, so unfortunately I'm going to have to move along. So thank you very much, Alan and Graziella. And we're moving on to North Wales, so specifically to Theatr Clwyd in Mold. We're joined by Gwennan Mayer, who's the Director of Creative Engagement at Theatr Clwyd, and I believe you're joined by Alicia Adams and Liv Joy. So I'll hand over to you now. Prynhawn Dawr, and welcome.
Diolch o galon, Tom. Thank you very much. It's an absolute honour to be here with this incredible mix of theatre companies and people. I am Gwennan Mayer, the Director of Creative Engagement at Theatr Clwyd. My pronouns are she, her. I'm white, 28-year-old woman with curly brown hair, and I have red lipstick on today.
Hello, I am Liv. I am a member of Company 17 at Theatr Clwyd. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white female with brown hair and glasses.
My name is Alicia. I'm also part of Company 17 at Theatr Clwyd. My pronouns are she, her, and I am an 18-year-old white female with blondish hair and glasses.
So yeah, we are a large producing house in Wales, and we have an incredible leadership team, our execs, Tamara Harvey and Liam Evans-Ford, who are driving our ship forward. We are located in North Wales in a small town called Wyddgrug, Mold, and we are a theatre on top of a hill with incredible hills and views. If you haven't been there, let's imagine a theatre on top of a hill with its sole purpose to make the world a happier place, one moment at a time. Our relationship with community, like many other theatres, is absolutely at the core of what we do. I guess it's really important to say that access and transport is really difficult when you're in rural area, and that's always a challenge when we're thinking of how to reach people and how to embed within a community. We're about a mile away from actual local town, and with shortage of funding and stuff like that, buses and transport is a real big issue for us. We used to do a lot within the community, but as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, trust takes many years, and it feels like COVID in a way has speeded up this process of trust for us. We're not going to talk about all the work that we've been doing, but just focus on a few strands, primarily our partnership work. So over COVID, our partnership with social services has really blossomed in a way. We created rainbow boxes for over 600 young people in the community donating things for young people, and then us working with social services to deliver them. We made a summer hub for the most vulnerable young people in our communities, with 72 young people joining. This also employed 28 freelancers from all different art forms to be part of this team. A couple of quotes that we used to collect. We used to do like a session report after each session. One was we were watching the last year panto on our main stage screen, obviously not live, but on a screen, and one of the kids stood up and said, "No, don't kiss her, remember about the 2-meter rule," which was absolutely amazing. And then our last day, one of the little boys said, "Happy Theatr Clwyd is my happy place." So yeah, just that we're in the middle at the moment of doing a half-term hub as well in person, which will now be delivered from 8:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening. This is to give respite for families and young people. And then the other thing we've continued to do is our work with our health board here in North Wales, Betsy Cadwaladr. We've managed to continue our 3 groups online for people with dementia and their carers. This took a lot of kind of care and management, and kind of us to refocus what we needed to embed first. So the support for tech, making sure that poverty in terms of tech was not an issue. Also the reminder every week of how to log in and what that process is, was a big thing of kind of phone calls and texts and just keeping that relationship going. We then developed a new programme with Parkinson's UK Cymru, which it's broadened not just in North Wales, but for individuals all across Wales are now joining, with 15 to 18 participants each week have begun a company themselves, which they'll be performing a performance end of the year. And a glimmer of hope we had in October, when we actually got to bring all of our groups, our companies, our youth theatres, our arts and health programmes back into the building for about, I think it was 5 weeks. And we managed to do a Christmas film with all of our groups, an intergenerational project. We haven't yet been able to screen that in our theatre because then the theatre got shut down. So that's going to be an Easter Christmas film, I think, and everyone wearing Christmas jumpers in Easter sort of vibe. Yeah, so I guess like a lot of things that have been said, it's about partnership work and how we can continue that partnership work with our community into the future. I'm going to pass it over now to Alicia and Olivia to talk a little bit about what it's like to be part of Theatr Clwyd's family.
So I'm actually the newbie to Theatr Clwyd's Company 17. I joined during lockdown, and I think we can all agree that lockdown has been difficult to say the least. But finding Theatr Clwyd and feeling like I belong in that space there and feel like a valued member of the community theatre, Theatr Clwyd offers me a place to feel safe, to make friends and to have creative freedom. And I think that that's something that's incredibly rare and also incredibly difficult to achieve. A space that has no judgment, which I think just speaks volumes to the work that Gwennan does and everyone at Theatr Clwyd. Theatr Clwyd has been really rigorous in terms of safety throughout COVID. I think that that's something that's helped me both mentally and physically, and speaks to how thoughtful Theatr Clwyd is as a building. I feel like communities feed our theatres And without our communities, theatres would mean significantly less. And something that Theatr Clwyd gives tremendous amounts of thought to is rooting all of their work in community outreach and continuing to look for ways to branch out and push their brilliant and inclusive work further. For example, their Power project, which means Power Project, which is supporting young girls aged 14 to 16 who aren't in the education system. And I'm going to hand over to Alicia. Thank you.
My growth within Theatr Clwyd has kind of been very personal and endearing. I still remember my first day at Company 17 around 2 years ago, and it was the scariest day. A room filled with people I did and didn't know, like it was familiar, but this alien space that I can only describe as safe, because that's what Theatr Clwyd is: safe, familiar. It's challenging in the best way possible. In this space, I got to learn about my peers, my community, but also myself. The Cylch, the circle that we created every week, extended to more than just our Tuesday evening session. Nathon ni rhannu ein profiadau, bywydau, meddyliau a teimladau mewn ffordd cyfforddus, yn y Gymraeg, in English, neu mewn iaith mond ti yn deall. When COVID hit, it was bad news after bad news, except our Tuesday. Tuesday was safe. Our Cylch strengthened, even over Zoom, because that's what Theatr Clwyd is. It's safe, it's our harbor diogel, it's our small theatre on top of a hill. It's our epitome of community and the epitome of safe.
We at Theatr Clwyd feel like we are really listened to, and we feel like our voices matter, and that will be embedded into the bricks of Theatr Clwyd for years to come. This work that Theatr Clwyd does doesn't feel like it's something that's going to stop, but it is what is driving Theatr Clwyd forward.
Diolch am y
Diolch, thank you for listening.
Diolch, thank you. So I think the word safe that you talk about there has come to mean all sorts, so many more different things in this past year, and it still means all of those things about people feeling welcome, but it has this additional layer of people going, actually, and is this something that I can take my personal kind of risk assessment to be able to engage in? And I think that seems to be clearly a really important thing for you as participants in this work, is making sure that the space remains safe. So thank you so much for that. I wonder, with some of the work turning digital, has that had an impact on people's ability? Has that increased the ability for your reach for your work, or has it meant that, or have you just had to think about things differently? I don't know if that's for Gwendolyn initially, but maybe the other thing.
Yeah, I think it has enabled us to reach further afield in a way, and pairing up our work with social services to then kind of embed into our weekly programme. So people that didn't normally know that we used to do weekly classes have now been having access to that, and of course us absolutely making sure that it's affordable, and bursaries and again supported by the team. For instance, Alicia, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but you're actually in Manchester in uni and kept going with us, really, which is, I don't know, does that, if it's helpful that it's online, I guess you wouldn't be able to join with us really otherwise.
No, it was really nice just to be like, everyone was in the space, but I was also in the space in this laptop, and I was moved around, I was sat on chairs, I was in the circle with everybody else. It was really nice.
Great.
Yeah, so I guess that's something for us to take forward, I think, how we can do that kind of digital and in the building sort of version of things. It does allow us to be a little bit more creative, I think, in that.
Great, thank you all very much for that contribution. We're now going to move on to our final speaker, who is Johnny Davenport from the Old Courts in Wigan. I see you there, Johnny. Great. Can I hand over to you to talk about how, I mean, in this period of time, a lot of organisations have contracted, whereas it seems to be that the Old Courts has got so many different projects on the go and is almost expanding in this time. So I'll be really interested to see how the pandemic's affected your work.
Cheers, Tom. I'm hoping you're going to add a couple of minutes injury time on at the end, but I'll keep it concise anyway. So, yeah, first and foremost, thanks for the invite. Really interesting to hear other people's experiences. I hope everyone's safe and well. So I'm Johnny Davenport. I'm a 38-year-old white male. I'm actually in work today in our building. I've got 3 daughters at home being schooled by my poor wife. So yeah, I'm the co-founder and artistic director of the Old Courts, which is a multi-art centre in Wigan. So I think a really brief overview of what we do a year is roughly 1,000 things. So shows, workshops, sessions of all manner, really. We've got a theatre programme, of course, where we're lucky enough to be on funded projects like the Collaborative Touring Network, Moving Routes. We also have a music programme, residencies, these types of things. So a lot of stuff going on, at any normal time. But then, going back to last year, we actually closed a week before the imposed lockdown because it just didn't feel right. We just had this feeling that things weren't going to be safe, and then we were closed down. It was forced on us. So we had 2 options really. Option A, shut the building, switch the lights off. People are on furlough and sort of ride it out and see what happens. Or option B was think deeply about who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And in truth, there was never an option A for us. It was always think about what we do and reassess everything. So we started thinking about ourselves in terms of the service that we provide, enriching people's lives, the meaning to what we do, how we can adapt, how we make memories, support people, how we can be leaders, and just went into emergency mode on a totally different way of working. So we basically developed or created some brand new relationships. The first one was around welfare calls for people in our community. So we consulted with our local authority, which is Wigan Council, and they were already receiving by this time a lot of welfare related calls, and they had no idea how to deal with them. So we created a call handling programme on our internal system. We trained a team of volunteers, and within a couple of days, all of those calls were being diverted to us. So we've actually handled to date just under 1,000 calls, and some of these call transcripts that we've read over just to see, what it was that was particularly stressing people out. It may sound obvious, but it wasn't. And actually a lot of the transcripts showed us that the conversations were including music quizzes, conversations about theatre, conversations about potentially some of the theatres, the other people who are on this today. So that was really successful, and that's wound down a little bit now, but it is continuing. The second relationship was regarding food parcels to get out to people. So we worked in collaboration with Verklempt, who are a local food charity, very much like the one we have a relationship with Slung Low. So they make great use of food that's destined for landfill. So again, we created a programme for the community to register when they needed food aid, and we scheduled the deliveries, which were delivered by a team of volunteers that we put together. So we delivered just over 800 food parcels. And a really sort of notable example of one of those is one of our volunteers arrived at a house with 2 adults and 6 kids, and they had no food whatsoever in the house. And the kids were cheering at the window when our volunteer arrived. Just really hit home that this is a real thing. A third relationship was regarding the packed lunches at half term. So we collaborated with 2 local businessmen who'd had a recently founded food directory, fundraised to buy packed lunches, and then we used our sort of newfound logistical capability to deliver 10,000 packed lunches to school children in Wigan. And something more in line with what we usually do, I suppose, was we created an outlet for community expression. So we worked with a local children's author, and we issued a call out for poems, photos, drawings, and basically any expressions from people in our community. And we self-published a book called The Language of Lockdown. So 107 members of our community now have work published, and it's been sort of a huge exercise in promoting culture as catharsis. And we actually had a 6-year-old little girl from our borough who did a really touching poem about Captain Tom, accompanied with some artwork that she's done. It was just really poignant. In addition to that, in a more sort of artistic way, we have the Old Courts Live, for which we've paid over 450 artists to make work from home, and we've shared all of that online. And that's actually got around 70,000 views online. So in terms of audience development as well, there's been room for that within all of this. So those are a few examples. And then the one that really sticks out, I suppose, is in December. We toured a kids' Christmas panto on the back of a beer lorry that we borrowed off one of our suppliers. That had a full lighting and PA rig. We paid the cast, and they had a social distance performances in 8 locations of virtually no engagement in the arts. And tellingly, some of the kids in a couple of the locations didn't even know how to respond to cues in a panto. So we really went deep with that. It was really hard work, really stressful, but totally worth it. So I suppose in terms of what we've learned from this, not just as an organisation, but as individuals as well, is the pandemic has emphasised to us the importance of community. Not taking each other for granted, never looking at people in our community as potential bums on seats. They're not just ticket buyers. Some of them aren't ticket buyers, never will be. And our community have really responded to this collaboration and this help. And they've shown that they're ready to be engaged, ready to be honest, ready to be vulnerable, willing to share emotions. And these are all of the things that I think as an artistic director, I'm encouraging my colleagues to look for and to find this. And we found it using community help. And it's one of the most amazing and beautiful things that we've experienced so far. And it's actually made us look at our community like close friends that we know or we don't know yet, or we'll come to know. So in terms of what's changed, it's increased our confidence in our ability to make huge positive change in our locality. And my perception personally of what is really important has changed. I still love shows, still adore, engaging artists, working with artists. Developing work makes us buzz. But the fact that we were relied upon in a genuine crisis is just so humbling. And we're intending on building on that now. And trust that has been built up is a really amazing stepping stone to do that. So I think I wrote a couple of notes before, which I haven't referred to yet. But one thing I did write was, we've got a fundamental acceptance now that the journey can be far more important than the destination or in anything that we do. So how this will now affect how we program, instead of simply sort of programming work and buying in shows or developing work that we think our community will enjoy, we're looking to reverse the logic really. And we're going to use our time and our energy and our passion to immerse ourselves in creating and hosting and developing work that instead of we think our community will enjoy, stuff that represents the heart and the sensibilities of our community. And that can only really be done by offering community members and community leaders a seat at the table with things that you do. I really hate, one of my pet hates when people have quotes about their community engagement and they put all this in the public domain, but they don't mean them, and you can't find any evidence of them. So I think it's really important that you're visible and you follow through on what you're saying, and these big bold statements you make about how important community is. And this isn't aimed at everyone here today. You're all absolutely smashing it. This is my general sort of way I think about it, is how are you going to prove it? So what we're doing now is I'm in the process of actually rewriting to a degree our artistic and programming policies to include some specific community references. I think the most important thing to remember for me as an artist or creative director or leader of any kind is that engaging your community isn't a purely benevolent relationship. It's not compromise necessarily, and it's not just charity. There's obviously inevitable kindness and passion in doing that, but you're using the resources that are available locally. Instead of trying to sort of second guess what people in the community want, speak to them, engage them and empower them. And if you genuinely achieve that, I think everything else falls into place. So from our point of view, there'll be significant change in how we work with our community, and we'll put that in writing and we'll be accountable. And hopefully, you know, in doing this and engaging our community, the artistic work we create will be much stronger, more engagement, you know, be a happier place, Wigan. So yeah, that's our crazy experience of the last 12 months or so, and what we intend to do going forward. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I think that point, prove it, is the takeaway from that, because I think we've all heard many theatres talk about their community work and say, oh yes, we put community first in our organisation. Today we've seen evidence of organisations actually doing that and the impact that can have, and saying, prove it, actually make a change in your place where people feel like that the theatre, where people feel like they can rely on the theatre as a place for that is really strong. It ties together nicely a lot of the things we've heard about across all of these things about trust and safety and about making sure, and about thinking about making sure everybody has access, making sure those kids get those crayons, as Alan said, and creating that theatre space where people can make and break bread together has been, so there's so many different things coming out of today that thank you very much, Johnny. I think the things that you were saying about making sure that those people who are the decision makers are the people who are actually impacted by the work is, I think, going to be the thing to talk about in governance of all sorts of organisations, and the theatre can take the lead in that. Great. So I'm coming to the end of the session now, so I'd like to thank all of the speakers. I want to thank Sarah, Emma, Heather, Sard, Christina, Alan and Graziella, Gwen and Alicia and Olivia, and Johnny. So all of those speakers, thank you very much. The recording of today's session will be live in the next few days, and if you're interested, we've got previous sessions on there where we've spoken about different ways that theatres have engaged with performance. We've spoken about scenario planning as we look into an uncertain 2021 and beyond, how theatres could stretch their thinking to not just work to a single most likely scenario. We've looked at the reopening journeys that different theatres have been on, as well as some more technical things about organisations in financial distress and insurance. Coming up, we've got one more session booked in, which is about theatres imagining their role as businesses, which is to do with mental health of the people they work with, as well as how theatres can have had to reimagine themselves as digital producers and how that's changed the organisations. So that's coming up in 2 weeks' time. Do let us know if there's other things that you want to hear about, because we are very happy to programme these sessions to get the word out. This session was part funded by the Garfield Weston Foundation, which we're very grateful for their funding, and I hope that you can join us again at future seminars. Thank you all very much for attending.